having worked with addiction for 35 plus years, what stands out for me the most, I never understood any of that stuff. So how did I help thousands of people get free?
Hello, today I am going to be sharing something about dopamine, which if I had have said to myself maybe 2 years ago, I would have got into a real battle, a real argument, because what I now believe completely conflicts with what I once believed. But the difference is that when I believed all this information about dopamine and I thought it was useful for porn addiction recovery, which we'll get into in this video, back then I was in a porn addiction, whereas now the difference is 2 years later, I'm not in a porn addiction anymore. Like, I feel completely free from this problem. I never worry about relapsing. I don't remove any triggers. I just have complete self-trust and self-control over my choices moment by moment. So there's a massive difference in those last 2 years. The main difference has really been getting the education from Mary Portis here and the Beyond Compulsion method. And what I want to do is just kind of share an analogy, first of all, about dopamine. So we can hear the cats in the background there, Mary.
Sorry, Brock is doing his weird thing. He does.
That's all right.
I know he does. He's mad because it's raining or something. You know, like, I can change the weather. If I could change the weather, I would do it for Barack. But he's got that Burmese in him, you know, and so it's like the Siamese cats, you know, with that. It just makes this weird noise. It's annoying. I'm very sorry, Brock. Shut your pie hole.
It's all right. Well, we'll carry on the thing about dopamine, right? So
Yeah.
basically, a few years ago, I honestly believed that, like, learning as much about dopamine, and this applies to other neuroscientific sort of stuff, I believed all of that would help me solve my porn addiction. And that kind of that education, that information, that idea, that concept that you're going to learn about the neuroscience and solve porn addiction had kind of passed down through the book Your Brain on Porn, right? All these different YouTubers out there, all these different people in this world of porn addiction recovery. So that's kind of where it started, is through the book like Your Brain on Porn and all that research by Gary Wilson, who passed away a few years ago. So it passed down, and everyone online talks about dopamine, transcription factors, neuroscience, etc. Now, in my opinion here's the best way I can put it, is understanding the neuroscience is very similar to understanding how an engine works in a car. Okay, so you don't need to be a engineer. You don't need to go to university and get a degree in engineering to learn how to drive a car. It's a separate thing. So what you need, if you want to overcome a porn addiction, is to learn how to be in control of yourself and develop the skill of understanding and mastering the addictive part of the mind, that part of your mind that wants you to relapse no matter what. That's all it is it's learning how to deal with that, and learning how to deal with compulsive desires in particular, which come from the addictive part of the mind. Now, all this information about dopamine, and you can go down a rabbit hole and learn and learn and learn, it's not really very useful, because if you imagine you get in a car and you've never been taught how to drive, but you know all this stuff about engineering and how engines work. I don't really know what engineers learn that much about, to be fair, but you have all this information about how the engine in the car works, but you don't know how to steer the wheel. You don't know how to put your foot down on the accelerator. You don't know how to put, the clutch into gear and all of these different things. If you don't know how to do that, you're going to crash. You are going to crash. And the problem is with the porn addiction recovery world is people are crashing left, right, and center. I mean, they call it slipping up, right, or falling into their addiction, which we see as very helpless language. So you've got this happening all over the place. And the problem is, a lot of the people in this addiction recovery world is they think they're making progress by learning more about neuroscience, or maybe even making changes in their brain, like strengthening or, improving functioning of their brain in these different ways by maybe meditating or going to the gym and exercising, eating healthily. So they're maybe changing their brain in those ways. It's a bit like tweaking and improving the engine somehow, without actually learning how to drive the car. So what I want to do today is just like share a few clips of a different person on YouTube talking about, the neuroscience and things you can do for porn addiction recovery. And then we'll go over to Mary and get your sort of expertise and insights on all of this. Does that sound all right?
Sounds good to me. Yep.
Sweet. Right, let's get into the first clip then.
If you want to help speed things up, then meditation is perhaps the best tool you can find for strengthening your PFC. And it's no coincidence that many nofappers have meditation in their toolbox. And you should also know that every time you are hit by a trigger and you choose to not follow it, you are actually strengthening your PFC a bit. So don't be afraid of triggers and urges. Look at them the way you view dumbbells in the gym. Each time you say no to a trigger, it is like you are doing one more biceps curl, but for your PFC instead of your arm.
Over to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, like, I don't even know what a PFC is, but that's okay. And all the neuroscience, I think what stands out for me the most is having worked with addiction for, helping people for Barack, I'm so sorry. He's got a little problem today. For 35 plus years, I never understood any of that stuff. So how did I help thousands of people get free and in getting mentally free of it? That's changing their brain. Their brain is changing because they're not just hanging on. They're really like, wow. The feedback I've gotten from people over the years is just like, oh my God, I had no idea this was possible, So change is happening because the desire is dissipating to the point that it's just a non-issue, So how did I accomplish that without understanding even what's a PFC, or never talking about dopamine, or never talking about what the FOSB, whatever you were talking about, all that stuff. I don't know anything about any neuroscience, yet I could help thousands of people, change their neural pathways. I know they're changing neural pathways, but like we talked about in a podcast before, we didn't even call it neural pathways back in the day. We didn't even mention that. That's something that I use that term now in the script because it's so trendy. So, but I don't know nothing about any of that stuff, but I do know how to put a key in the ignition of the car, and I know that you got to turn it to fire the engine. I have no idea what happens between turning the key and the engine firing. There's something going on in that car that makes that happen, I know I got to put gas in it, now there a lot of electric cars or whatever, but got to charge it, whatever, but I know that. But the thing is, if you don't have a way to change something, you can understand the science of it all you want, but it's not going to really make any difference to actually solving the problem.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
another way of looking at it is think of so many great people who have lived before us, some people who have just created absolutely incredible things, and some people like philosophers who haven't had any like addictions in their life. I mean, sure, some philosophers absolutely have, but think of there'll be many who have lived before us who have never had any problems with compulsivity, or maybe they have had a problem at some point and they've managed to transform and figure shit out themselves, right? Now, all of that took place, that's been taking place for like decades and decades and hundreds of years, thousands of years, probably. How much did they know about the neuroscience? Well, none, because it's just a socially constructed thing that we use to try and help in different areas that's now come across and sort of being, commercialized into a tool to help people, solve addiction, but it doesn't really seem to be working very well.
Well, and the other thing too, excuse me, if you put the key in the ignition and the car doesn't start, you just keep putting the key in the ignition, or start sticking your other keys in there or whatever, rather than go, okay, there's a problem between here and the engine, and how to fix that or whatever. Then you're going to take it to an expert, right? But the one thing I was thinking of too is like working for many, many, many years with food compulsion, right? And all the people that I helped with overcome food compulsion, they lose weight. That's just one of the benefits of, stopping a food compulsion. You get to lose weight or whatever. But I don't know the first thing about the science behind, metabolism. I wouldn't know, calories if it hit me in the face. It's like, okay, calories, what? I don't know how many calories are in what, or fat content in what, or how things, respond in your body. There's so much nutritional science now, I mean, I can tell by looking at food if it's going to be good for me or not. I mean, if you're looking for eating healthy food for physical reasons or whatever, but helping someone overcome an addiction, a food compulsion, I don't know the first thing about the science behind it.
Mm.
It's just not necessary. And what it's doing is it's distracting people and getting them to focus on completely the wrong thing and becoming more and more obsessed with nutritional information or workout information and all that stuff. Just like with the neuroscience with the porn addiction, people become obsessed with learning about how the dopamine works and how the whatever crap word, all that. They're focusing on that rather than focusing on a way to change the pathway that leads from compulsive desire to acting on it so that they can actually get free of addictive desire.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I don't consume like that many people's content, to be honest, because I don't use social media. I only really consume content nowadays, really, that's to do with porn addiction recovery or NoFap, so we can then critique and analyze it. And I can look at where I went wrong before me and you, because I consumed a lot of that information before me and you. I mean,
Yeah.
hundreds of hours, probably thousands of hours of, spending time watching NoFap videos and stupid shit like that. So that's kind of what I consume nowadays. But with the information I have consumed in my life and, a few podcasts, I guess, in the past, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say like, yeah, so my life completely transformed when I learned about dopamine. Like, I've
Yeah.
just never heard anyone
Yeah.
say that. And I don't think I ever will.
Yeah,
And
I don't
yet,
think
like,
so either.
there's millions and millions of people consuming information day in, day out about
Yeah.
dopamine. And yet you look at the amount of people who actually use that information in a good way, like to actually improve their life. And I just think it's very, very rare. I mean, sure, it
Yeah.
might be a little bit interesting or comforting to know that there's things going on in your mind that maybe result in you having more cravings or feeling a bit bad afterwards.
Yeah.
But you don't really need someone external to tell you. Like you'll figure it out yourself.
And most people with that information, then they use it as, oh, it's my brain. My brain's making me do this, right? Which feeds the helplessness. And yeah, there was something I was going to say.
Before you say that though, Mary,
Yeah,
just to
go ahead.
make that point even clearer, what you just said there. So as you say, people kind of blame the mechanisms in their brain, like, oh, it was, dopamine made me do it. But
Yeah,
that's a bit like saying, okay, well, I crashed into someone on the motorway because, do you have a motorway there? Was it called like the freeway or something else? I don't know.
freeway.
A
Yep.
freeway, sure. So yeah, like I crashed into someone when I was driving on the motorway or the freeway. Oh, and I did it because the engine, I don't know, and then you start using your engineering degree to explain some
Right.
mechanisms in the engine that have nothing to do with you steering
Yeah.
out of control and
Yeah.
actually smashing into someone.
Yeah. It was the fault of the something else. Yeah. But you said you've never seen anyone go, oh, I've learned all about the neuroscience behind the dopamine and the blah, 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 right? Become like, oh, and now I've changed my life, right? Well, the same thing is with the nutrition stuff. I've never seen anyone go, oh, now, oh, I understand that this is a nutritious thing to eat and I should eat at this time, or I should, eat my more protein or whatever, all the millions of things and videos that you see about what to eat, right? What I see is the more they look at that stuff, the more obsessed they become, and the obsession is such a huge part of one of the, really negative consequences of being stuck in an addiction is that obsession. You're thinking about it all the time, and it's like what you should eat, shouldn't eat, all that stuff. It just makes it worse, I mean, bottom line, just makes it worse. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is when it comes down to that moment when you do have the desire, it doesn't really matter how well your brain's functioning. If you have that desire and you've not been taught how to deal with the thought patterns going on when you have that desire, how to deal with the addictive part of the mind, you're going to be pretty screwed, basically. And it's so unsustainable to think you're just going to keep on improving your brain functioning, and you're going to get to a point where, I don't know, your dopamine receptors have changed and suddenly you're just free from the desire for the rest of your life, but you've not actually done any work at all on changing how you think and your thoughts, maybe your beliefs around things, because the addictive part of the mind is just going to come up and basically just say some absolute bullshit and try and get you to engage.
Well, they have a lot of drugs that supposedly are going straight to the receptors, right? The receptors in the brain receive the signal or whatever, receive the alcohol, like
But now
this
Naltrexone and the Sinclair method.
right, yes, exactly, the Sinclair method. But the thing is if the problem is, that's kind of like going to the engine when the problem is between the firing of the key in the ignition, the firing and the firing of the engine, right? We're going to go and grease the bearings or what, in the engine when the problem is in the wiring that's going from the key to getting the engine to start. But there is a lot you hear. They even had drugs for, oh, well, all these GLP-1s supposedly are turning off those signal by somehow affecting that part of the brain, so you're not going to want it or whatever. It's kind of starting at the wrong end, but I don't know. It doesn't seem very
Yeah.
useful to me.
Should we play another clip? And I think
Yeah,
this
sure.
time round, hopefully people can hear what's being talked about as advice, right, for porn addiction recovery, and maybe have a little bit of a different perspective on it this time round. So let's play another clip and see what is said by this very popular YouTuber.
Other than that, physical exercise and brain-healthy foods may help your PFC as well. And that is also true for your desensitization, as for example, high-intensity interval training has been shown to help grow new dopamine receptors. Intermittent fasting and cold showers can also help desensitization. Oh yeah, cold showers, hello! But a bit of a warning here. Don't take these to the extreme. Please be careful and remember that more is not always better. Socializing may sometimes also help increase the number of your dopamine receptors, but probably not if you happen to be at the bottom of the dominance hierarchy.
Do you hear me laughing in the middle of it? Oh my gosh. That is just literally all of it is so bad, Um, for starters, okay, maybe dopamine's all part of it or whatever, but you're messed up. You've got addicted neural pathways, which when you want to engage in these addictive behaviors, it feels uncomfortable. And then when you engage, you get relief. So, your dopamine's messed up. So let's just leave it at that and probably not talk about dopamine anymore. But intermittent fasting, it's like, do these people understand the detrimental effect of intermittent reinforcement when you have an addiction in your life? I mean, so many people with the diet, intermittent fasting, they're just, if they didn't have a food compulsion when they started intermittent fasting, they're going to have one by the time they're done, because it's just, I know people that they're fasting, and then they just binge like crazy. You're just teaching the mind, that you're gonna give in an extreme way, so it's gonna be so much more obsessed with the whole process, it's like one of the worst things that you can do. And really, it's just a moneymaker. Oh, here's the new diet, intermittent fasting, when we actually we fast naturally all the time, because breakfast, you break it down, it's break fast, right? When you get up in the morning, you've slept all night, probably eat your dinner whenever. I eat dinner late sometimes, whatever, but there's a whole long period of time in the evening. And then when you are asleep, that you are fasting, and then you get up, you break your fast. That's just a natural process. Just, it doesn't really need to have, you don't need to go buy a program on how to intermittent fast, and that one is really detrimental, but it's hashtag intermittent fasting. That is super trendy. I mean, you hear about it all the time that people are doing that, you know? And I mean, you can do the same thing with porn, I guess. Stay off for a certain period of time, and then you're gonna give in, and you're getting in deeper every time you do that, you know?
Yeah. Well, we had a client who listened to this guy a lot in the past, and he was sending us voice notes recently, sort of talking about his experience of consuming this kind of content all about the dopamine. And he was saying how what he'd do is, he would go on these streaks, but anyone following that kind of approach, which is so no fappy, all they're doing is they're just managing an addiction. They're just going on streaks. Like, that's the best possible outcome, is you go on a
Yeah.
long streak, and that's almost like being rewarded online. Like, oh, well done, you've been on a 90-day no fap streak. But I mean, when you break it down, like, going on a long streak is just staying in an addiction and counting down the days until the next inevitable relapse. You're not free if you're
Yeah.
doing that. You're just trying to get away from the problem for as long as
Yeah.
you can without actually really changing who's driving the car as such,
Yeah,
and
I
changing
call
the
it the
thought lines.
revolving door. The
Yeah,
revolving door. Yep.
exactly.
Basically, you stop for a while, then you back in it, stop for a while, get back in it. And that revolving door, 99.9% of the time, revolves into relapse, not recovery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Let's
Yeah.
play a final clip then.
Yeah.
So then there is also some evidence pointing towards sunshine as helping to upregulate your dopamine system. And lastly, I'm a bit hesitant to share this, but since I really want to share helpful things with you, I'll do it with the disclaimer of you have to do your own research and everything you do is at your own risk. Okay, so now there are some studies on animals showing that a supplement called CDP choline has been able to increase dopamine receptors up to about 18%, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, for rats, whatever. Okay, here we go. Sell them the supplements. Selling some kind of product, it's just, and sunshine, yeah. If your problem is, depression, but you don't have an addiction, yeah, sunshine can be helpful in that regard. But be careful. You don't want to burn yourself. We have issues with the ozone layer, people. Be careful out there if you're using sunshine to deal with your addiction, So yeah, sunshine's a good thing,
So
for
what are you going to do at 3 a.m. when you just suddenly
right.
want to watch like
Yeah.
porn? like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just so
Yeah.
stupid.
I was
Like,
thinking too, like, I was talking about how the food compulsives intermittent fast. Well, a lot of them are eating straight up till midnight when they go to bed or whatever. And I've had many of the people I've worked with, they'll wake up in the middle of the night and eat too, it's like, what are you going to do? Okay, I'm going to go, well, get on a plane, go to where the sun is shining. I don't know. It's just such ridiculous advice. It's
yeah,
because your change is made in your brain in the moment of compulsive desire. So, yeah,
yeah.
it's
Don't
just
get.
not feasible, not yeah.
Thing is, as well, is like any sort of information on like neuroscience, like, well, not any, but like some of the information on neuroscience, all they're doing is just like taking some data from some studies on rats, for example, as he talks about in
Yeah,
this video, and then they try and apply that to humans without really taking into the context that human beings, what like makes us unique as a species, like what is absolutely incredible is the power that we have to basically create our own realities and like make crazy shit happen and like turn one thing into another and just do like the most incredible stuff. Like, humans are freaking complex and are just amazing in my opinion, and
yeah,
I love it, right? And obviously very, very stupid at times as well, of course, and have many, many psychological biases, absolutely.
yeah,
But like, to compare us to rats, I mean, that is just absolutely insane. And like, the whole point is you can think and make rational choices, whereas a rat doesn't have the same thinking mechanisms as we do. Like,
yeah.
obviously, like if I was
You
talking
know,
to a rat right now, the rat wouldn't understand what I'm on about. Like, obviously.
there are some similarities that we can glean from sort of these scientific experiments or whatever, because I years ago I was connected with this pediatric endocrinologist who was studying addiction because they were sending him obese kids, you know? And I mean, he knew it wasn't just a gland problem, you know, the endocrinologist, right? So he was giving cocaine to rats or mice or whatever. And when he gave it, well, he'd give it to them like an endless supply. They'd do it and they'd do the rest of their life, whatever. And then he cut them off completely, and then they would resume their little mousy lives or whatever, you know, do their thing. But then he gave it to them intermittently, and all they did was sit at the dispenser and wait for the next hit to come. And they stopped, like, they wouldn't sleep, they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't play, they wouldn't reproduce. They'd just sit there and wait because they knew it was coming, you know? Intermittent reinforcement's real deal. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think all this, so many of certainly the no-fap streaks intermittently reinforced, just like I've said before, like, that nofap is like the Weight Watchers of porn, you know, where it's like teaching people to diet, right? And then they give in, and it's creating compulsion. I mean, there's already a huge epidemic with it, but it's just making it worse and worse and worse. You know, the treatment itself is making it worse. So yeah.
But I do want to like point out, because I mean, yeah, I've heard of like these studies about, you know, novelty and dopamine, and I remember I even like did an interview with the guy who wrote The Molecule of More, like Daniel Z. Lieberman, and that was interesting and stuff. And they talk a lot about reward prediction error, right, which is kind of how intermittent reinforcement comes about. But like, even understanding all of that didn't help me solve the porn addiction,
Yeah.
because
No.
in those moments of compulsive desire, I still didn't know what to do. And I think, yeah, sure, like you talking about intermittent reinforcement, like, yeah, whether it's real or not, it's not going to help you get out of a porn addiction. You know, you could learn everything about intermittent reinforcement and have every rat study in the world, but that's not going to help you think through your choice in the moment of compulsive desire.
Yeah, you were understanding the process of the intermittent reinforcement, and you were intermittently reinforcing at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. By
Yeah,
doing the streaks. Yeah, it's
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully this can kind of shift someone's perspective, because I feel like the current paradigm for porn addiction recovery is based in helplessness, and there's a lot of information which you can sort of cascade down and just go deeper and deeper and deeper into without really getting anywhere. And that's what we found with a lot of guys we've worked with, some incredibly smart, academic, intelligent people who have read countless books, and yet they still struggle with compulsive desires and actually stopping this behavior once and for all. So hopefully, you know, this can help shift your perspective as well a little bit. Cheers for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.